Hello, I'm here on site at the Supercomputing Asia 2023 here in Singapore at the Singapore Expo near Changi Airport. And with me today, I'm very, very pleased and very privileged to have Professor Satoshi Mazuoka, who is the director with RIKEN Center for Computation Science in Japan.
Yes.
And he's going to be sharing with us about supercomputing in Japan, specifically on the fastest one, which is Fugaku in Japan. So thank you very much, Professor, for your time today.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here. Singapore is like my second home. I come here so many times, almost like every month or every other month. So,
really? Okay.
Yeah,
so maybe we can have a catch up again.
Yes,
after in a couple of months.
Yes.
Maybe there will be new developments.
Yes, we're always full of surprises. Yes.
Right. So, Professor, for our audience who are not too familiar with Fugaku, supercomputer in Japan, can you just give us a brief introduction about what it is?
Yes. So Fugaku, the name is an alternative name for Mount Fuji. And the intention is to build a supercomputer that's not only very high performance, leadership supercomputer in the world, but have very broad applicability to be compatible with the rest of IT industry, have lots of applications, users, and so forth. So we designed Fugaku from ground up for this purpose. So we developed our own ARM processor that you, of course, would be using in smartphones, but now in enterprise space. And then each chip, H2FX, we co-developed with Jitsu, is strung together in this network, which is also very high performance, to comprise Fugaku. Now we have 160,000 of these chips, and each chip contains 48 compute cores. So the entire number of cores in the system is close to 8 million compute cores. So it's a massive supercomputer, one of the fastest in the world in many metrics, but at the same time, by the use of the ARM processor and the software stack, general purpose software stack and so forth, it's a big ARM cluster from the user's perspective. So it's very easy to use.
Right, and it's of course what you call, or what we call Excel scale computer, and that is, I understand, if I remember right, is 10 with 18 zeros after it in terms of floating point operations per, right?
That's right.
And I think you mentioned that it's equivalent to what, tens of millions of smartphones.
Well, about 20 million smartphones.
20 million smartphones, right? Is equivalent to one.
Well, it's about this. It will be equivalent to one Fugaku, and that's how many smartphones are sold in Japan every year.
Oh wow! Okay, right.
Japan's a fairly large country in terms of population, so you can feel you can feel the magnitude of the infrastructure we have built. It's like one of those ultra mega scale, cloud data centers, which may have again 100,000 of nodes. But each chip is designed to be high performant in these so-called HPC workloads. So it's software compatible with the rest of the IT industry because it's ARM. It runs Linux, runs Windows, it runs all your popular applications. But of course, the purpose is to excel in high-performance computing. And there are many architectural and software features that allow for these performance to be exploited much beyond what the commodity processors provide today.
So why is supercomputing so important in Japan? So you talk about it, the applications are quite broad.
Yeah, so Japan has had a very long history of supercomputing, spanning almost 60 years now. So for the very first inception of computing, of course, Japan was, along with other countries like U.S. and some countries Europe, were first, first to the game building these large mainframes. But of course, there were demands of high performance, so supercomputers back then even existed, way back 30, 40 years ago. Okay. But as computing became more general purpose and pervasive, all the software assets started accumulating. The supercomputers have also become quite accessible and usable in various fields. For example, a more typical case is artificial intelligence, which has seen significant revival in the past 10 years due to the the revival of deep neural networks, which the algorithms existed, maybe since the 70s or 80s, but simply the machines were simply not strong, powerful enough to be able to do what's called backpropagation training, which is required in neural networks. But now the computers have become millions of times faster. So now we can afford to train these large neural networks, which by which we know it's causing all these innovations in the world. So supercomputers are essential for societal advances in manufacturing, advancing science, to prevent disasters, create new drugs. We can essentially create just as we do in gaming, we can create these virtual worlds, but much more in a scientific, accurate way, such that we can reproduce the real world, and try all these experiments without causing harm. And be able to predict the future, or investigate the past, and be able to produce new innovations that will lead to new products.
You talk about simulations and also digital twins in order to perform some of these applications. So, and you also talk, of course, about the enormous amount of energy and power consumption that's required to run all these heavy workloads. So, can you tell us about this tremendous improvement that you have made, Fugaku rather has made in terms of power consumption efficiency?
Yeah. So obviously these machines are very large. They're like I said, it has 160,000 compute nodes. So the machine as a total consumes about 16 to 17 megawatts constantly, which is very large. The comparable power consumption in Japan of any large facility would be something like Tokyo Disney Resort.
Right.
Right.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Not just the land, Disney Sea. Right? So, and the hotels. So, and they're not on 24/7, but we are. Right? So it's immense amount of energy. So our electricity bill is in multi tens of millions of Singapore dollars, as you can imagine. But but because of this, we need to be utterly more energy efficient as much as possible. We're much more efficient than cell phones, for that matter, because simply to achieve that scale, you have to be extremely energy efficient. So, and the advances made are quite significant. And not just us, it's pretty prevalent across many supercomputers. But for example, Google said that in one of their events that the data center power efficiency, efficiency per work, improved about a factor of 5 over the past 10 years. But in supercomputing, for example, in Fugaku, we improved the power efficiency by a factor of 40.
Wow. Okay.
Over 10 years. Yeah. So compared to supercomputer is very similar. It has lots of commonality with clouds, but the attention being paid to utmost energy efficiency is even, and this is of course backed up by all the innovations we have in the HPC area. The metrics we achieve far exceed what the hyperscalers are achieving in terms of energy efficiency. But that's required because we need to run these big machines.
So it sounds like a lot of industries can learn from you in terms of how to save energy and become more efficient in the power consumption.
Yeah, of course, the cloud data centers are, of course, not standing still. And also, there are many supercomputing centers who are actually, essentially in the same boat. So we have all these ideas about achieving carbon neutrality, because that'll be required. And, and there are many things, not just achieving energy efficiency, but also energy recovery, also, or how to offset the energy. For example, some supercomputing centers are using the heat generated from the machines to power the local heating because they're in a cold climate.
Right.
And so essentially, they're reusing the entire heat generated from the machine for free, basically, to offset carbon. And also to there are some proposals to utilize green energy at the source of power generation, rather than to put data centers far away from the power sources. One idea is to put them where the green energies are, very close to home, basically, to reduce their transmission overhead. So there are many ideas that are being proposed and even practiced, ultimately to achieve carbon neutrality in our compute, because like I said, the compute does consume significant amount of energy for a good purpose, but we can't be ignorant of the phenomena.
So to give our audience an idea of how the physicality of the Fugaku computer, can you tell us how big the building is and
Well, the building is fairly large. The entire floor space of Fugaku is about 3,000 square meters. So it's about more than 3,000 square meters. So it's close to half a football field. Or soccer football field.
Right.
And it occupies, there are about 432 racks, but each rack contains almost 400 nodes. Compared to a standard data center, which per rack, typically it's about 40 nodes. So we have 10 times the density of a standard data center.
Right.
And then we have 400 racks of them. So if we constructed Fugaku out of commodity technology, involving just 40 racks and so forth, then the data center space required would have been more like 30,000 square feet instead of 3,000. And then the power needed to drive the machine, because we're probably about 3 times more power efficient than standard processors. The energy required would have been more like 50 to almost going up to 100 megawatts in some cases, with a peak load, which it will be equivalent to one of some of the largest data centers out there, and the ultra mega data centers out there. So it's a very large. It's probably physically the largest supercomputer ever built. But compared to like these cloud data centers, where these machines are fairly standalone, that in use they're split into these partitions. Allocated in terms of allocations. Theoretically, you can run, and people have run, all the 8 million cores in Fugaku in one single application.
Wow, okay.
So you exploit 8 million way parallelism.
Right.
And you have to achieve very high efficiency. But of course, in the past, this was deemed as impossible by the experts. But now we can do it due to the advances in technology. So we have come a long way, to the extent that the technology is available such that even Fugaku is used even by high school students. So because it's still very much software compatible with their home PCs.
Okay. So so the next natural question is, looking forward, what can we be expecting from Japan in terms of supercomputers? But before we go into that question, if I may just ask one question about cybersecurity, just for our cybersecurity audience. Now, you talk about medical sort of simulations being run on supercomputers. Can you just briefly tell us about, from a privacy or cybersecurity point of view, how what the protocols are to secure some of these data that is being used in the simulations?
Yes. Well, there are improvements from all around. Of course, we have some security measures, but of course we cannot guarantee full security.
Yeah, I agree.
And on Fugaku, it's an open system, so the security guarantees we provide leave a lot of security responsibility to users. Of course, we have the normal securities of like any decent supercomputer has. But some supercomputers are dedicated, for example, to handle more sensitive medical data, like direct, not so much human genome information, but anonymized. The human genome information we handle on Fugaku are anonymized.
Oh, right, I see.
But on the other hand, there are some supercomputers that need to directly handle these, like patient records, and those are firewalled and subject to much tighter security. So we have machines at various levels, with some with much tighter security to protect the privacy, whereas in other cases, the various types of anonymization strategies do provide sufficient level of security while not compromising the science is done. Well, that said, the capabilities of creating digital twins to becoming significantly detailed. We can create, we not only create the digital twins of like the pharmaceutical applications where the substances will attach to cell targets, we can couple that with things like real organ simulations. So we have virtual hearts, and we have the virtual respiratory systems, and we have virtual brains. Right. So, and if you can personalize it. In fact, we have the abilities to personalize, let's say, your heart to look exactly like your heart. And if you have any medical symptoms, this digital twin heart is supposed to show exactly the symptoms for we be able to do more detailed analysis and what would be the appropriate medical, not only diagnostics but the cure.
Right.
Yeah. So we're getting to that level where we are starting to be able to replicate humans digitally as digital twins. But then maybe some of the cybersecurity concerns will go to the next level. And,
that's right.
Yeah. So we're concerned. We don't have some answers right now, but we are cognizant of the situation.
Right. And also, so with I'm conscious of the time. So the last question then, what is the future of supercomputing in Japan?
Yeah, of course, there are many supercomputers in Japan, not just Fugaku. Fugaku is a flagship, but we have, many more. So for the moment, we'll improve Fugaku, and also machines that are compatible to Fugaku are being deployed. For example, the weather, the Japan's meteorological agency had just installed a smaller version of Fugaku for their meteorological studies and rain bands, because these torrential rainfalls are causing significant disasters. And we're working with them. They use Fugaku too, but they wanted their private machine. So they bought a 10,000 node machine.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Which is for a normal supercomputer, that's huge. Compared to Fugaku, it's smaller, but it's a huge supercomputer nonetheless.
Wow, okay.
One of the probably number 2 or number 3 in Japan. And we'll continue to improve. We'll work with with the cloud providers to provide technologies that can disseminate to the cloud our applications. Our solutions, et cetera, that can be not only run on Fugaku, but run on cloud infrastructures. So those are some of the short-term goals, to synergize with the rest of the IT infrastructures, and also to accommodate more users, especially from the industry, not just from the academia. Well, already we have lots of industrial users, but to expand our horizons such that the results, a lot of advances made with Fugaku can be immediately applied to society. And of course, Fugaku sometime, in not near future, but in a close future, fairly close future, Fugaku will become outdated. So we're in, as a research institution, we're investigating what would be the next machine. And since we have the development capabilities, we just don't, purchase stuff off the shelf. We have the research and development capabilities along with our industrial partners. Fugaku is entirely built custom. Right? It's not, although it's an ARM chip built of ARM processor, we didn't get any IP from ARM except for the instruction set. All the internals of the chip are proprietary, ours. Fujitsu and RIKEN develop. So we didn't, take the ARM cores like some of the cell phone vendors. We're more like Apple, who develop our own cores. Right? Okay. So we're looking into the future technological trends, how we can improve, given all the physical limitations that we foresee, but what kind of advances we can make. And so hopefully, with all that, we'll have a next machine possibly in a time frame of 2029, 2030 time frame.
Okay, so within this next 10 years.
Yeah, and that'll make Fugaku look quite outdated, hopefully. And of course, we're looking at other compute paradigms like quantum. So we will probably host although quantum computing is fairly limited in its capabilities, for the areas where it's good at. It could provide 10, 20, 30 years down the road. It could provide some innovative speed ups in some application areas. Mm-hmm. So we're providing a research platform for people to investigate that, coupled with supercomputing, of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are many things we're doing to look basically to advance computing ahead, because we are a research institution after all, and we just don't host. We not just host machines,
right,
but we make advances.
You do a lot of research and development.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, at this conference, Supercomputing Asia, you are also looking at partnering with your counterparts in other countries as well.
Yes, of course, including Singapore,
right.
where we have a long-standing relationship with NSCC, A-STAR, and other top-ranked institutions. So very satisfied with our collaboration. We hope to collaborate even more.
Right. So yeah, on that note, thank you very much, Professor, for your time today to share with us, what is Fugaku, and hopefully our audience will have a better understanding of supercomputing in Japan and how we can, take a sort of perhaps a virtual tour of Fugaku on your website.
Yes,
as well.
It's on our website. Yes,
that's right.
Yes, it's a 3D virtual tour. Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I look forward to doing that tour. So thank you, Professor. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much.